Keep yourself in the loop of everything football. Listen to Alex and Jeremiah on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Hello there, I'm Jeremiah.
I am Alex, always and forever here.
Dedicated to college and NFL football. The latest football news on and off the field. NFL draft trade rumors. We've got you covered from the NFL, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything else in between. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, where we talk the latest news, rumors, and games of the NFL and college football, from the latest signings to this year's breakout stars and all of the news in between. As always, I'm Alex.
And I'm Jeremiah.
Hey, man, what's going on?
Nothing, man. I'm very excited for today's show.
Yeah.
We're winding down to these college previews we've been doing since the beginning. I don't know.
Pretty about 3-4 weeks in.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
This is our second to last preview show, and we are covering the ACC today. I'll be doing the Coastal Division, which consists of Duke, Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, Virginia, Miami, the U, Virginia Tech, and North Carolina. I don't know if I said Virginia Tech twice.
I think
Virginia,
you did
Virginia
say,
Tech.
You did say Virginia Tech twice.
Excuse me. So Virginia and Virginia Tech, the Cavaliers and the Hokies, respectively. And then Jeremiah will be doing the Atlantic Division, which consists of Boston College, NC State, excuse me, Syracuse, Clemson, Florida State, Louisville, and Wake Forest. So clearly he's got the better side of that coin.
Well, wait, what do you mean the better?
Teasing.
Oh, okay.
I'm just teasing.
If you want,
you got some more playoff contenders up in there.
It's just say it's top heavy.
No, I mean you asked me.
Yeah.
I was more than happy. I was more than happy to do the Coastal.
I asked you if you want to do Coastal.
I probably know the Atlantic a little bit more, only because you have three teams that are very much in the spotlight in Boston College, Clemson, and Florida State.
Even the middle tier
exactly,
teams,
yeah.
It was hard to decide where to place them at as well.
Yeah, I mean a lot of these schools finished, in both sides of the division, similar states. But we're gonna go ahead and get into it, and I'm gonna start off. I'm gonna do, like I said, the Coastal Division. I'm gonna get right into it. And I'm gonna get my first team out there. It is the team that finished first in the Coastal Division last year, and that's North Carolina. They finished 11-3 overall, 8-0 in the conference, winning every one of their conference games, and they finished number 15 in the AP poll last year as well. So that's pretty good if you ask me. First-year starter at QB, Mitch Trubisky, full-time starter now. He's a fourth-year junior. He is finally going to get a chance to start. He had plenty of games played in his 4 years, 21 games over the last 2 seasons. Get this. He was passing last year, 40 for 47, no interceptions. Pretty good, right?
Yeah, really good.
Pretty
good.
If we look at their schedule, it's pretty middle ground. They do have the benefit of a couple easy games in the beginning. They do start the year off against Georgia, so that should be a good game. But then they go to Illinois and play James Madison the following week. So a team this good should start the year off 3-0, in my opinion. And then they go to Pittsburgh, Florida State, Virginia Tech, Miami, and Virginia on a straight of ACC games before a bye week.
It's really tough slate of games.
Yeah.
Back to back.
Yeah, Florida State's going to be a tough game for them. Miami is going to be a tough game, much improved this year. Miami does look like they're going to be.
Even Pittsburgh can be.
And Virginia Tech
game.
as well. Virginia Tech was a bottom feeder of the year of the division last year, only going 4-4 within the conference, but they are looking to have a better year this year.
And of course, they end the year against North Carolina State.
But they do, off their bye week, they do have somewhat of a slower week. I mean, not week, end of the year. They do face Georgia Tech, Duke, and then the Citadel before ending the year against NC State.
Duke looks like it's going to be better also.
Duke does look like they're going to be better. I will get into them in a little bit. I don't actually have them very high on my
And yes, Duke does have a football team, people.
Yes, Duke does have a football team.
Yeah,
they're known for basketball.
I'm just letting the listeners know they have a football team. Because I know me and you know that.
Yeah. NC State, happens to have a football team too. North Carolina, funny enough, they're probably more of a basketball school.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about it. But I mean, we'll get into Duke later. I don't actually have Duke that high, but we'll get into it. But like I said, they do have somewhat of an easier slate, I would say, at the end of the year than they do to begin the year. Citadel should be an easy win for them. I believe they can beat Duke and Georgia Tech. and possibly even have a really solid game there. At NC State, the in-state rival, I think they can win that again like they did last year. So I currently have them finishing with 10 wins. I think with this tough schedule in terms of back-to-back conference games, regardless of the fact they went 8-0 last year, might pull them back a bit, and I think I'll give them 10 wins. So.
Okay, that's a fair assessment. I think this team will go as far as Trubisky, goes.
Yeah.
So
It's all up to him this year.
It's all up to the quarterback right now.
Yeah, and like I said, this is his first year starting, but by no means is his first year playing.
Yeah.
He's got plenty of experience under his belt, so I'm interested. He's a good quarterback. I'm interested to see where he goes. Moving on to my number 2 team, and that is the U. It's Miami. Miami finished 8-5 overall last year and 6-2 in the conference. They have a new coach this year in Mark Reich. He is actually a former Miami graduated in '82. He's actually calling plays this year, too, which is something he had to give up when he was a coach in his prior school a few years ago. All of us are very familiar with the quarterback, Brad Kaya. He's returning, and as long as they can protect him, I think they'll do pretty good. Unfortunately, the offensive line's ability to protect and its reliability is not exactly the greatest going into this season. So that's going to be something that they really need to focus on, is protecting him, because as like you said, they're going to go as far as Trubisky goes, North Carolina. Same thing kind of goes with Miami. The offense goes in the sense of their quarterback, and they give you an idea. He finished top 3 last year in the ACC in yards per game, fewest interceptions, yards per attempt, and passer rating, all of which he finished in the top 3 of. The biggest thing for them, like I said, is keeping him healthy, because the offensive line gave them the 112th, I guess you could say worst at that point, 112th overall in the nation in yards per carry last year. So it's going to be tough if that offensive line doesn't produce. They do have the plus, I guess you could say, of what one would call a weak start to their schedule.
They should be able to start at 4-0 before heading to Florida State
within the within this.
Well, actually,
they're
playing that game at home. Actually, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they have Florida A&M, Florida Atlantic, and the Appalachian State Mountaineers for their first 3 weeks before an early bye week, and then they come out of their bye, hopefully, in my opinion, one would imagine 3-0 to face Georgia Tech on the road, but they come back for a stretch of 2 home games against 2 big opponents in the ACC, and that's Florida State, and then back-to-back weeks North Carolina, who I have winning the Coastal Division.
And they also play at Notre Dame on late October, 2 days before Halloween.
Yeah, they do. And then they start a stretch after Notre Dame of their last 4 ACC games. We're going to be playing at home against Pittsburgh, and then on the road for their last 2 on the road games against Virginia and North Carolina State, and then finishing back home against Duke. So I think that the start of the year is going to be important for them. They can really get off at, like you said, 4-0 before going to Florida State, which is going to be a really tough game for them, in my opinion. Excuse me.
Probably the toughest game they will probably have next to Notre Dame.
I would say, next to Notre Dame and North Carolina, I would say definitely. And that's only because, like I said, I have North Carolina winning this division. I kind of have them as my favorites. So, excuse me. Okay, so I do have them winning 9 games. I think it's really going to be important on how they handle that beginning stretch and that stretch after Notre Dame. I don't, unfortunately, have them winning at Florida State or North Carolina, and Notre Dame's going to be a tough game, especially on the road there in South Bend. So, as of right now, I'm giving them 9 wins. I don't think that they can be far from 10. I think it's definitely a possibility. But at the same time, this can shift to 7.
It is possible because the schedule they have in the middle, and then they have North Carolina, Florida State, and then they got Notre Dame.
Yeah, they could definitely win 10 games, but they could also win 7 games. Yeah, depending on how they handle this.
Either way, this team is bowl eligible.
I think so.
They're a bowl eligible team.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you on that one. All right, so moving on, I have my number 3 team coming out this year as Virginia Tech, who was 7-6 overall last year and 4-4 in the conference. They also have a new coach, Justin Fuente. He comes over from Memphis. He recruited to Memphis originally before leaving quarterback Jared Evans, who was last year's number 1 JUCO dual threat quarterback. They originally were going to recruit him to replace Paxton Lynch, but Of course, that didn't happen because he came with him over to Virginia Tech. Heading into the season currently, I don't know if they've named a starter yet, but it was the battle between him and fifth-year senior Brendan Motley, who is going to try to pretty much be the starting quarterback this year. They do return running back Trevon McMillan, who's coming off an 1,000-yard season while splitting time, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. But the most impressive thing on this offense is, to me, tight end Bucky Hodges, 6'7", 245 tight end Bucky Hodges, who joins the other two top receivers in the offense, and that's Isaiah Ford and Cam Phillips, who give whoever wins that quarterback position 3 solid targets on the offensive line. And they also return 4 of their offensive linemen, veteran linemen, who have played over 60 games in the ACC and in college football in their career, led by their 2 guards who could be all ACC this year, Wyatt Teller and Angie Conti. So I think that they have a very nice year ahead of them. I have them finishing 3rd because their schedule is going to be hard in the middle. They have Liberty Flames to start the year off, which you see a lot of teams, face smaller schools week 1.
The FCS opponents.
Mm-hmm. But then they go to Tennessee, and they play back at home on a long trip back to play Boston College, and then finish their 4-game stretch before their bye week against East Carolina. So I think they can go 2-2 there.
Well, they do have 4 straight home games to begin the year.
They don't. They play in Tennessee.
No, it's on the schedule I'm looking at. It says at home versus Tennessee on ESPN. Unless
I have their first 3 of their first 4 games against Liberty, Boston College, and East Carolina. I have them at home in Virginia, but I have them in Bristol, Tennessee, to face the Volunteers on September 10th.
Well, it looks like the schedule is wrong on this. All right.
I'm sure we'll have to look at it. I find it very unlikely that they have 4 straight.
I know.
I was
like,
I could buy 3 before you.
There's no way. But yeah.
And that only means one thing, is that means they're going to have to play a lot of road games to end the year. Excuse me, but I could definitely have them winning at least 2. To see how Boston College looks. We had them pretty heavy in our conference preview for them earlier this year. Excuse me. In terms of where they'd finish, Tennessee's going to be a tough opponent for them. But like I said, they do have a bye week on week 5, and then they have a stretch that's going to be tough. Like I said, North Carolina, Syracuse, Miami, Pittsburgh, Duke, Georgia Tech. Then they finish the year off against Notre Dame and then in-state rival Virginia. The unfortunate thing for them is they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those games on the road, including, actually, Virginia's on the road as well. Technically, it's home on the road, but, depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, they got, North Carolina on the road, but they do
honestly, I think that's going to be a loss for them.
Yeah, but if you're playing at a hostile environment and the best team in that division.
Easy.
But, you're also playing Miami at home, who is regarded as the second-best team in this division as well. Yeah. Then they got Pittsburgh on the road, which is going to be tough. Duke, they're not going to be, pretty. They're not going to be easy.
I think they can win that game, but
they're not going to be easy.
Easy win.
But it is going to be competitive. And Georgia Tech, that should be a win. Notre Dame, I don't see them coming out on top on that one.
Especially in South Bend.
And, of course, they end the year against in-state rival Virginia, which is not going to be an easy game. These in-state rivalry games.
Yeah, regardless of how records look.
Yeah, they're usually tough. Yeah, but the person I really want to watch on this team is Bucky Hodges.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. He's a player that I'm excited to see this year. He's poised to break, a lot of receiving records for the program, and he actually came back to school instead of opting for the NFL.
Yeah, he would have been drafted probably pretty high.
Yeah, so I think, he's poised for a good year, probably poised to be a high draft pick especially first round.
We'll see about that.
So I'm looking forward to seeing Bucky Hodges this year.
Yeah, I like tight ends, big receiving tight ends. They're fun to see. But yes, so I have Virginia Tech ending the year with, I would say, about 7 to 8 wins again. I don't really have them. I'd say maybe 8 is a ceiling. I mean, it's a hard competition for them from the bye week on, and those are going to be tough games to win, especially on the road.
Yeah.
So I got them winning about 8 games. Moving on to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is going to be the 4th team in my division preview. And they did finish 2nd last year in the ACC, but in my opinion, they're going to have somewhat of a drop-off. They did finish 8-5 and 6-2 in the conference, but they had a lot of pieces missing that, if healthy and producing the way they did, they can definitely jump up in this preview. Pittsburgh was definitely the hardest team for me to work with in this, but they have so many question marks on the offense, it was hard to give them a definite 2 or 3. So we've talked about on the show before. Running back James Conner is returning after an offseason that nobody saw coming. He had MCL surgery, but he also battled
one of the best
Hodgkin's
stories.
lymphoma.
One of the best stories from the offseason.
Absolutely, yeah. And when he was healthy before his unfortunate offseason that led to him missing all of last year, he ran for 1,765 yards, 26 touchdowns, and a pretty deservingly, or at least deserved. I can't figure out a way to say that.
He won
a pretty much
ACC player.
He won the ACC Player of the Year, and very much deserved it. You can say. They do have a quarterback transfer from last year named Nathan Peterman, who finished second in the ACC in touchdowns with 20 and completion percentage in 61.5%. He only threw one interception. It's pretty impressive. Obviously, they lost Tyler Boyd, which is going to be a big hole in the offense they need to fill at the receiver position. But I do believe that players can step up. I haven't looked as far into the receivers as naturally one might, but it's a team that can do well with what they have. Now, they unfortunately have arguably the toughest schedule in the ACC. They do start the year against Villanova, but then immediately go on the road. In state. They fooled me because I looked at Pennsylvania. Penn State, they do play on the at home, actually. So they have 2 straight home games. They should win the first one. Penn State, we had them listed somewhat reasonable in our preview.
Yeah, in our big
in our Big Ten preview.
Yeah, Big Ten. I almost said Big 12.
It's okay. So that's gonna be a tough game for them. We'll see how that goes. They do face Oklahoma State following that, and Oklahoma State's never an easy win for most teams. Some teams can blow them out, but Oklahoma State has a knack for playing in good games. And then they go and face North Carolina, and that's their first 4 games alone. And they face North Carolina on the road.
First 2 road games.
Yeah, first 2 road games. Oklahoma State, North Carolina. Then they get somewhat of a break, I suppose, and if you think of it that way, in Marshall. They face at home. And then they play Georgia Tech and Virginia before starting their bye week in pretty much the middle of their schedule. But what's tough is the end.
Yeah, the end is tough. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
They do play Virginia Tech.
Yes.
On October 27th. Then after that, they got back-to-back road games at Miami and Clemson, which are going to be really tough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see them winning both of these games.
Yeah, I say maybe one.
Maybe Miami. I don't see them being Clemson at all.
Yeah.
Clemson's
their
playoff contender heading to this year.
I don't have to wait to hear yours to know.
Which I'm going to talk about later in the show. And, of course, they end the year off on Duke and Syracuse back-to-back home games.
Mm-hmm.
They're very winnable.
Yeah,
But I think the Duke game will be competitive. But I do see them winning against Syracuse kind of easily in a way, yeah.
Okay, I can dig it. All right,
which I will talk about Syracuse later.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will indeed.
In the show.
Okay, so I have them winning 8 games.
Okay,
but see, the thing with them winning 8 games and Virginia Tech winning 8 games is I believe Virginia Tech could probably win a few more in the conference. The way that Pittsburgh is shaped out, it's going to be a tough, it's going to be tough the way the games are scheduled.
Well, James Conner, if he was on this team last year,
I
think they would have won at least 2 more games, 2 or 3 more games, and possibly even be a contender in the Coastal Division.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know how Connor's going to play. And if he plays healthy this year, I think they can win more games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Pittsburgh Panthers.
All right, moving on. Duke. I have Duke finishing in the number 5 spot. Duke did finish last year 8-5 overall and 4-4 in the conference. What's most important for them is the health of their quarterback, though, Thomas Sirk. He did throw for 2,625 yards and 16 touchdowns last year, and not to mention he led the team in rushing. He did rupture his left Achilles tendon this February, which I don't have to know the pain to know that's probably very painful.
Yeah, you should look at my face.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
That's I can tell that we understand that pain. They do have some backups that are potentially ready to play in Parker Boehm and redshirt freshman Quentin Harris, not to mention Daniel Jones could be vying for a starting gig, also a freshman. But they are definitely in a better spot if Thomas Sirk ever did get the option to play. I don't know if he's going to be able to play this year.
He's probably done. Even if he does come back, it probably won't be till late in the year.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll probably be cemented with another starter there.
Exactly, yeah.
So.
They have a pretty deep running back committee, which is a plus for them, depending on who starts at quarterback, between Jayla Duncan, junior Sean Wilson, and then not to mention sophomore TJ Ramming and senior Anthony Nash. So, those are two receivers they can have help out on the receiving side, but their two running backs, Jay Ludd Duncan, and Sean Wilson should help the offense in that sense. And they do have a pretty solid offensive line, but there's holes that need to be filled. They did lose all ACC right tackle Casey Blazer, not to mention their left tackle and their starting guard from last year. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can do to, fix that. Their schedule is not a very easy schedule either. They do start the year against North Carolina, the Central Eagles at home, first of their two home games that hopefully they, in their minds, can win against North Carolina. And Wake Forest is a team that you have to
I'll talk about them later.
Coming up. But then they face Northwestern, who in their minds should be a win, but then they go 4 straight games against 4 tough opponents in Notre Dame, Virginia, Army, and Louisville. Not an exactly win game, guaranteed wins.
The only, they can definitely win against Virginia and Army, but I see those games being competitive.
Notre Dame and Louisville are going to be pretty tough, yeah. Then they go into a bye week, and again, a team in the ACC has a tough second half of the year, and Georgia Tech is their first game in what is one of my favorite names of a stadium, and that is Bobby Dodd Stadium in Atlanta. But they face Virginia Tech, North Carolina, Pittsburgh, and Miami to end the year. 2 games they do play at home, and then the last 2 they do play on the road against Pittsburgh and Miami. This team has a lot of questions on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball, and I don't see them winning very many games in my opinion. They have to fill a lot of holes, and unfortunately, with a team that, no offense, isn't the best, in that division, it's going to be tough for them to keep up with what they had 8-5 last year. So I have them winning 6 games this year.
Okay, so you got them going to a bowl game. Okay.
Yeah, they can be bowl eligible. Yeah. They might be on the cusp of bowl eligibility, but I have them winning, at least maybe getting to a bowl game. All right, second to last, Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech finished 3-9 overall last year and 1-7. They did finish last in the ACC, the Coastal Division last year. It's it was a tough year for them. It was a very tough year for them. They're going to have to do a lot this year to get more than 1 win, but the schedule again isn't necessarily in their favor. Some parts is, some part aren't. They face the year off starting against Boston College, which I immediately have them losing. Then they play a team from Mercer, the Bears. I don't know much about Mercer, to be honest. I imagine that's a team
they're in the FCS.
They imagine should win. But then they have a tough stretch, excluding their last game, leading into their bye week, and that's Vanderbilt, Clemson, Miami, and Pittsburgh before playing Georgia Southern before their bye week. You can imagine they could beat Georgia Southern, but those 4 games in between, they do play 3 of them at home. So that's a plus. They play Vanderbilt, Clemson, and Miami at home before traveling to Pittsburgh to face the Panthers in Heinz Field. And then, of course, like I said, Georgia Southern in their bye week. They do have tough games to end the year as well, though, and it's doing them no favors in facing ACC opponents. Duke, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, Virginia, and Georgia's thrown in there as well.
The SEC team, which we'll talk about in our SEC preview, but not
next
today.
Week? No, it's not today. I don't see them improving very much. I have them winning 3 games, I would say.
Again. I don't know. I have them probably winning.
I can see
2.
4.
I can only see them winning 2 games. Against Georgia Southern and Mercer. And I can probably see them winning against Virginia. Okay, but other than that, man, this schedule is tough. I think they had the toughest schedule in the conference.
I want to say 4. I want to say 4 wins, and that's mainly because my final team is Virginia, and they did finish 4-8 overall and 3-5 in the conference. I have them finishing about 4, maybe 3 games, but worse in the conference than Georgia Tech this year. They do start the year off against Richmond, the Richmond Spiders, in a home game, which is good for them. But then they go to Oregon, and they face the Ducks on the road before going to UConn and then playing at home against Central Michigan, which Central Michigan is one of those teams that may not be up there in a notable conference, but they play good games. Or you'll see a lot of offensive linemen come out of Central Michigan.
They've been one of the tough teams in a while.
Yeah, a lot of offensive linemen and tackles come out of Central Michigan. Big dudes. And then they finished the first half of their season off against Duke. And Duke, the Blue Devils, on the road, is going to be a tough fight for them. Then they have a bye week, and then they have the roughest stretch of their schedule. I'm going to got to take a break here, man. This is hard to keep short, believe me.
Well, you're almost done.
Almost done. Okay. Pittsburgh, North Carolina, Louisville, Wake Forest, Miami, Georgia Tech, and Virginia Tech. They get to play Pittsburgh, North Carolina, and Louisville all at home. Then they travel to Wake Forest, get to come back home again for Miami, and then play Georgia Tech on the road, and then again they get to come home for Virginia Tech. So they get the luxury of playing at home, but they're probably still going to lose most of these games, unfortunately, against better teams in Pittsburgh, North Carolina, Louisville, Wake Forest, Miami especially, Georgia Tech, and Virginia Tech in the in-state rivalry. I forget what that game is called. Every team has the Shillelagh game or the Apple Cup between Washington and Washington State. I forget what that game's called, but I have them honestly winning 3 to 4 games this year.
Okay. It's fair assessment. Okay.
All right. Now, we need to take a break.
Yes, we do.
We need to take a break.
You need to take a break.
I do, man. Somebody give me a Diet Coke. So I need to take a break, and Jeremiah is going to finish this bad boy off with the Atlantic side of the
do not
ACC.
miss it, guys.
It's going to be great. I'm really excited for it. So, you guys don't go anywhere. Jeremiah and I'll be right back at the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, we're back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. And Jeremiah, it's your turn to shine. Time to shine, and it's your turn to give me the Atlantic Division preview.
All right, what's ready to go? Let's get this off started. Okay, well, my number one team I have finishing in the Atlantic Division.
Let's see if you're going to surprise me here.
It is the Clemson Tigers.
No, not even close. Didn't surprise me at all.
I'm not gonna lie with you. It was very hard for me to figure out who was going to finish first and second because Clemson and Florida State, these are going to be the two teams to watch in this division and in the conference the entire year. These two teams could possibly, Clemson is a playoff contender. Florida State can emerge themselves as a playoff contender. And these two teams play in the season, and that game will decide possibly the division and the conference.
Very much so, yeah.
But getting back to Clemson here, they're last year's runner-up, losing to Alabama 45-40 in the national championship. The 14 wins for the Tigers were the most in the program's history for a single season. They do have Deshaun Watson, who is the best dual-threat quarterback in the nation, and he's arguably probably the best quarterback in the country. And I see him as a Heisman finalist again in December.
Oh, easy.
Yeah, he was first in FBS with a 1,000-yard rushing season and a 4,000-yard passing season. The Tigers will have 8 offensive starters, including Watson, running back Rain Gallman, receiver Mike Williams, who suffered a broken bone in his neck in Clemson's openers last year. It was brutal.
I remember that.
But he is coming back this year. He should boost a deep receiving core, especially with a speedy receiver, Artavius Scott, in the slot.
That's a good name.
Yeah, Artavius Scott. Great, Scott. Okay, but anyway, moving on. Clemson averaged 38.5 points last season, and the scary thing is they can even be any better.
They can do better than that.
They can be so much better. The defense, they're going to go under another rebuilding year, with Shaq Lawson, Kevin Dodd, and Mackenzie Alexander now in the NFL. Senior Ben Ballware, the leading tackle last year, returns, as well as Kodre Tankersi.
It's good pronunciation.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, you like that?
Good job.
Yeah, thank you.
You're
All
welcome.
right. And, defensive coordinator Brent Venables will have to rebuild this defense once again because the unit finished first in 2014 and 10th in 2015. So they did have a little bit of a drop-off, and they could have a little bit of drop-off again. But this offense is so good, and if the defense plays just as well as they did last year, they can make another run to a national championship.
No, easy.
Yeah, Clemson's one of the deepest teams in the nation. If Watson has repeated success and Venables works his magic with the defense, the Tigers could challenge for another college football playoff berth and a national championship berth. The team staying away is Florida State. But I do see Clemson finishing the year undefeated, 12-0, going back to the playoffs, going back to national championship. And Florida State, the team that's turned away, will play Clemson on October 29th in a game that could decide the ACC Atlantic berth and college football playoff spot. So these two teams are going to be head-to-head the whole entire season. So October 29th is probably one of the matchups to watch this year in college football. Well, getting back to Florida State here, I got them finishing second this year in the Atlantic Division. The Seminoles lost 23-13 last year to Clemson. I wouldn't be surprised if Florida State wins the October 29th matchup versus Clemson. I wouldn't be surprised one bit because they went 10-3 in a rebuilding year. This team is even better this year. I wouldn't be surprised one bit.
Okay.
Florida State went 10-3 in rebuilding, and like I just said, it is 1 year removed from Jameis Winston being the starting quarterback, who is now at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Didn't go far at all.
Who is in his second season in the NFL. So the quarterback position remains the biggest question mark. A redshirt freshman, DeAndre Francois, is the favorite to win the quarterback job ahead of true freshman Malik Henry and Sean McGuire, who played 5 games last year and missed spring practice after undergoing ankle surgery in January. So they don't know when McGuire is going to be back. That's why Francois is inserted as he's expected to win that job right now. Mm-hmm. And McGuire fractured his ankle during Florida State in the 38-24 loss to Houston, who we talked about in our American Conference preview. And whoever starts at quarterback will have Devin Cook in the backfield. Devin Cook is expected to be a Heisman candidate this year. So we got 2 Heisman candidates in the first 2 teams in the Atlantic. The 2 best teams in the nation, arguably. 2 of the best teams. So we got 2. So October 29th could possibly be a game versus Deshaun Watson versus Devin Cook. 2 Heisman candidates.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook is definitely a Heisman candidate in my opinion.
Yeah, he just was phenomenal last year. He probably could have even had a better year if he was healthy.
The entire
year, and the offensive line was more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So he could have been easily a Heisman candidate last year.
Yep.
But the offense does have a lack of a vertical passing game. That's the thing that hurts Florida State versus Clemson. That's the thing that Clemson has that Florida State doesn't. They don't have the vertical passing game. But the defense on Florida State is better. They got DeMarcus Walker coming back. They got experience in the secondary. Jalen Ramsey is no longer on the team due to going to the NFL, being drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars, who possibly we don't even know he's going to play in the beginning of the year. We'll talk about that in our next episode, maybe. But defense ranked 9th last year, allowing 17.5 points per game. They're even better. The lack of a vertical game on offense will hurt Florida State and their big-time matches, especially in Clemson. But if the defense somehow keeps them in those games, especially in the one against Clemson on October 29th, I think this team can honestly win more than 10 games, and I predict they will finish 11-1. So that's my prediction for them.
11-1's pretty good.
Yeah, I have them improving from a rebuilding year dramatically. Right, my number 3 team is a sleeper in this year college football. Clemson and Florida are the nation's top teams, but Louisville is a sleeper in the Atlantic Division and possibly could be one of the best teams in the nation. Louisville won 6 of its final 7 games, and 16 starters will return. Quarterback Lamar Jackson is one of those starters It was absolutely dynamic for the Cardinals. He's only 19 years old and a sophomore. He can be even better this year, and that is scary. That's absolutely
it's scary to think about.
It's scary to think about. The thing about Lamar Jackson, though, he took 25 sacks and had a higher interception rate, 1 per every 31 passes, but was highly effective. So if he can improve upon that, which I think he will, the sky's the limit for Lamar Jackson in Louisville. I have a little fun fact for you, Alex. Michael Vick had 3 games of at least 100 yards passing and rushing in his collegiate career at Virginia Tech.
ACC.
ACC.
Uh-huh.
Lamar Jackson had 5 last season.
Wow.
Exactly.
That's pretty good.
That is pretty good. And, Michael Vick is regarded as probably the best college quarterback of all time to some people out there.
Yeah. Some people think that.
Yeah. So, Lamar Jackson could not be far off. I think he's probably about 2 years away from being probably the best in the nation, but he is. I think he's the second best quarterback in this conference, in my opinion.
Okay, I can dig it.
But, Jackson needs to take fewer hits. The offensive line is more experienced. They do have 4 stars returning, so he probably won't take as many hits. But the offense needs to be more consistent. Offensive line, that is. Brandon Ratcliffe, Jeremy Smith, and L.J. Scott return in the backfield. And that should help Lamar Jackson and the Cardinals offense.
All right.
Yeah, and then Jamari Staples returned. He averaged 17 yards per catch last season. James Cook also returns to the slot position. Linebackers Key Kelsey, Devontae Fields return, as well as safety Josh Harvey Clemens. Fields was a beast late in the year, having all but 2.5 of his 11 sacks in the final 4 games, and he looks like he's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate in the ACC. He did win Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year with TCU in 2012, and he looks primed for a big year, looks primed to be a first-round draft pick. And Louisville does have a favorable schedule. They will play Florida State at home in Clemson, they play Clemson on the road in the first 5 games. So they have a really tough stretch to start the year. They will also play Houston on November 17, which is another tough game for Louisville and Houston. So that's a big primetime game in the making right there. And every other game should be winnable outside of those 3 games, and I think they will finish at 9-3.
I can agree with you on that. 9-3.
Okay.
I'd say it's about where I have them finishing.
Okay.
Personally, at least.
Number 4, I have the Boston College Eagles, who finished 3-9 last year, but I have them improving so much.
Most notable quarterback from Boston College, name him.
Most notable quarterback?
Yeah.
Doug Flutie?
Matt Ryan.
Oh,
I mean, maybe Doug Flutie.
Yeah,
Probably Doug Flutie.
Yeah, Doug Flutie.
But
Doug Flutie is the first one that comes on my mind.
I knew you had probably forgotten that Matt Ryan went to Boston
I think
College.
a lot of people forget Matt Ryan was at Boston College.
Not me, man.
Well, of course, you're the football historian. You don't forget anything.
Yep. Continental Football League.
All right. Continental Football League. Boom. All right. Anyway, getting back to Boston College here. This offense was just horrible last season. Horrible. But their defense was probably the best in the nation.
They didn't have a Matt Ryan.
They didn't have a quarterback. Quarterback has just been a problem for this team since Matt Ryan left. I can't name you one quarterback since Matt Ryan's left Boston College.
I can't either. I can name Matt Ryan and then everybody after Matt Ryan. That's just the group.
It's kind of like the Cleveland Browns.
I can name all those guys, but they've had the same amount of success.
Yeah,
so.
It's kind of like that in a way. But graduate transfer Patrick Tavales will start at quarterback. Tavales did play 28 games and completed 427 of his 759 passes for 5,000 yards, but does have the same amount of touchdowns as he does in interceptions at 24. John Hillman is expected to return to the running back position. Boston College only averaged 3.9 yards a carry. So Hillman should boost that offense in the run game. And the offensive line needs to improve. For the offense to improve, this offense is probably, they weren't consistent last year. As you see, their offense was just absurd. But the front 7 and the defense should be the best in the ACC again. They should be in the best in the SEC again, with Harold Landry joined by Zach Allen and Truman Guntefeld re-anchoring the interior of the defensive line. Matt Milano, who had a team-high 17.5 tackles for loss, returns at linebacker. And John Johnson will be the leader in the back and the secondary, with Justin Simmons gone at the safety position. And I think Boston College will rebound and will finish 7-5. So I do think the offense will improve, but this defense could be better and will keep the team in games.
Yeah, I mean, their defense was kind of the bright point of their team.
Yeah, it was the only
year.
bright spot.
Yeah, I mean, the offense wasn't. So it's definitely, it's something that can help them win games at least. I mean, I agree with you on the amount of games you're giving them to win personally. I would say that's about what I would.
That's
give
a great year. 7 wins. That's a great year for Boston College.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. For Boston College, that's a great year. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, my number 5 team, North Carolina State. Yeah, they will look to earn a 3rd consecutive postseason appearance, but will have a tougher schedule this year. They will play Notre Dame on October 8th. Will go on the road against Clemson on October 15th. Go on the road against Louisville on October 22nd. And Florida State at home on November 5th. Miami on November 19th. And at North Carolina on November 25th. That is a tough slate of games. Very tough.
Yeah, that many in a row. That's going to be hard for them to stay afloat there.
They have Notre Dame, Clemson, Louisville back to back to back, and then they got to go. October and November. It's going to be tough for the Wolfpack here. Though North Carolina State will also be without quarterback Jacoby Brissett, who is now with the New England Patriots.
Yes.
Despite questions at quarterback, the Wolfpack will have a deep stable running backs with Matt Days and Jalen Samuels, who is listed at tight end. So they'll find a way to have both of these guys on the field at the same time, utilize both of those guys on the field. The two combined for 28 touchdowns last season. Days was on track to become the program's first 1,000-yard rusher since 2002 before a foot injury caused him to miss the final 5 games. So that was a pretty big loss for the Wolfpack there. Jalen McClendon is expected to take over for Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. McClendon has good size. He's 6'5", 202 pounds, so he has the size, but he doesn't have a lot of experience. With 14 career passing attempts, so it's pretty much Jake McClendon is pretty much getting thrown in the fire here, especially in a tough division and a very tough conference.
Mm-hmm. Very tough conference.
Very tough conference.
It's one of the tougher conferences in football.
Yeah. The second toughest conference in football, in my opinion.
And we'll talk about the other one next week.
Yeah. But you know who else is on this North Carolina State team?
Who?
Thaddeus Moss, the tight end for the Wolfpack.
Who's his daddy?
Who's his daddy?
Who's his daddy?
I'm going to tell you who the father is, just like Maury would. He is the son of NFL legend Randy Moss.
Legend, putting it lightly.
Oh, dude. Second best receiver of all time, in my opinion.
Okay, I wouldn't go that far.
Really?
But no.
Really?
Wouldn't go that far, but very good. Yeah. Top 5 probably, in my opinion.
I think he's the second best receiver, in my opinion. Anyway, that's a different discussion, a different show.
Yeah, I guess so.
Which I think will be a good discussion. I think I might have to jot that down in my notes to talk about who is the best quarterback, best running back, best receiver of all time in the NFL. But anyway.
Those questions are really easy to answer.
Well.
Especially quarterback and receiver.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Quarterback. Montana, probably.
Yeah, Montana.
Receiver. Jerry Rice. Easy.
Second best receiver, Randy Moss.
Well, we'll have that discussion one day. I don't think you're right, but we'll talk about it.
Really? You don't think I'm right?
No.
That's
then again,
fine.
it's an opinion, and opinions can't be wrong.
Honestly, we're going to have to agree to disagree on that one.
Sure.
All right. But anyway, going back to North Carolina State here, the defense was ranked number 29th last season, and the defensive line should be the strength again. You got B.J. Hill, Justin Jones, Contavious Street, Bradley Chubb, and Darian Roseboro all returning. So it's good for the defense to have all these guys back. The thing is, though, with North Carolina State, they do have a tough schedule. They got major holes on offense, and I predict North Carolina State will finish 6-6 and will be bowl eligible.
All right.
All right. We're winding down to the final 2 teams here in the Atlantic Division. Number 6 team I have is Wake Forest. They finished 3-9 last season. Wake Forest finished with 3 wins for the second straight year. Again, health was a problem at quarterback for the Deacons.
Deacons. It's a unique mascot.
Didn't it used to be called the Demon Deacons?
Yep.
But they changed to the Deacons?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And John Wolford and Kendall Hinton, they just couldn't stay on the field. But will compete for the starting quarterback job this season. There's no decision made yet. It probably will be made later in August before the first game. With the experience on offense, the defense has as much experience. With 4 upperclassmen slated to start for defense, Wendell Dunn and Duke Ekafor are dangerous off the edge. Defensive line is considered the best unit on defense. Wake Forest linebacking corps. They lost 2 starters, including Brandon Chubb, but Marquel Lee, the team's leading tackler in the past few seasons, is returning, so that should be a big help for them. Wake Forest doesn't have much experience in the secondary around Ryan Janjavion, who's finished first or second on the team in tackles for 3 straight seasons. So having Janjavion and Lee helps this defense that does not have a lot of experience outside of those 2 guys. Wake Forest does. They did play 31 underclassmen. They're 2 deep. Depth chart last season, and it showed. It really showed they only won 3 games for second straight year. But they do have a manageable schedule besides Florida State, Louisville, and Clemson, the 3 toughest teams to play all year. The Deacons had a -13 turnover margin last season. I don't really see them improving. That's pretty bad. I do see improving in that a little bit. You can't be that bad for a 3rd straight year in a row. With several players and experience in a variety of positions, I think they'll finish the year at 4-8. So they'll finish 1 game better than they did previous 2 years.
Okay.
Now, last but very least.
You say that every time.
Well, they are the last team.
And the least team,
because
I guess.
Technically, I like to talk about the last team. You don't like to talk about the last team at all.
It depends the team.
Yeah, because I remember you didn't want to talk about UCF.
Because I had nothing to say about UCF.
Anyways, of course, the last team I have in this division is the Syracuse Orange. I have Syracuse finishing last in the Atlantic Division. The Orange started 3-0 last season before an 8-game losing streak and won 27-17 versus Boston College in the final game. So they had an 8-game losing streak between their 3rd and 4th win.
It's pretty bad.
That was pretty bad. Pretty bad. And it's going to be hard for the Orange to get 6 wins because of Louisville, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Clemson, North Carolina State, and Florida State on the schedule. That's 7 losses right there.
Yeah.
And I didn't even name everyone else that.
Yeah, you didn't even get that far into it.
I didn't even get that far. That's 7 losses right there. I don't see them accomplishing that much this season. There is a player I do want to watch on the Oranges. Eric Dungy, the quarterback this year. He showed he was accurate. He was athletic. He has playmaking ability. But, he had problems staying on the field with multiple helmet-to-helmet hits that kept him out in 4 games.
Yeah.
And when he was on the field, he made some plays. I'm really excited to see him. If he plays well, maybe the Syracuse Orange can improve, maybe have a better finish in the division. And it's a rebuilding year for the offense, who are in a new offensive scheme, the hurry-up offense in Dino Barber's first year as the head coach. The defense is also in the rebuilding year with a new defensive scheme, the Tampa 2, and Barber's first year. It will take time for the units to adjust to both new schemes, and I think they're 1 year away from being bowl eligible, 2 years away from maybe being pretty good. And I think they'll finish 3-9 this season, and that is my ACC Atlantic Conference division preview.
Boom.
That is.
Boom.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Well, we need to take our last break, and then we need to go.
Yeah, I need to take a break, and I need to go.
Yeah, with it. So we're going to take our last break here at the Gonza Media Concepts Football Podcast. We'll be right back, and we're going to tell you, even though you already know, give you a little recap of who we're going to talk about next week on the next preview. So we'll be right back.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
All right, we're back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. So, if you were not listening, I have my team finishing first to face Jeremiah's team finishing first. It comes out to be North Carolina
versus Clemson.
And I think everybody can understand probably Clemson's going to win that one. So,
well, Clemson is a playoff contender and a national championship contender, so there's no argument there. I don't think.
No, I'm with you.
But North Carolina is a real team to watch out for this season. They can even be better. They can be even better.
They can be better, which is scary.
Yeah, no. But anyways, that is our ACC conference preview and our last college football preview. We will be talking about the SEC. Yes, the big honcho, the head honcho, the granddaddy of them all, the SEC. But anyways, we'd like to thank you for tuning to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. You can catch us on iTunes each and every week, Monday through Friday, 4 episodes per week on iTunes. You can also catch us on Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and SoundCloud. You can also listen to our show, my baseball show, Alex's sports and soccer show on GSMCpodcast.com, as well as our other portfolio of shows that are not sports related. We got entertainment, music, television. We even have a fantasy football podcast for you guys, because I know fantasy football is coming up. It's really big right now. I know I'm getting ready for my fantasy football draft. Alex already drafted 2 teams.
Well, one team. My next team, I think, will be a few weeks.
Well, anyway, you're in there. But anyway, yeah, we'd like to thank you guys for tuning in, and catch us on our next episode as we will be talking about, yes, I know, Tim Tebow. But we'll be talking about him very, very briefly. And we will be talking about Joey Bosa. We'll be talking about Reggie Ragland. Some injury news for Buffalo there. Yeah. And we will end the show previewing week 1 of the preseason.
Get excited, guys.
I am excited because we are officially going to preview some football games finally. We're going to be talking about some actual football games.
Yeah.
Not real football, but exhibition football. It's just as good.
Yeah.
It's just as good.
I'm still excited.
All right, guys. We'd like to thank you for tuning into the show. And don't get
confused and tune in on our next show.
Yeah. All right, guys. You guys take care and have a good day.